Okay, welcome everyone. We're about to start with our first panel discussion of today. We've invited 3 partners and my colleagues Xavier on the stage to talk about custom fit insoles made through additive manufacturing techniques. I will introduce everyone very shortly and they will introduce themselves and the company that will a bit further. First we have Xavier working for Twikit in business development partnerships. We have Michael from ZiggZagg, we have Aleksander from Twikit, and we have Evelina from Elinvision. Welcome to all of you. You can now introduce yourself and the company soon.
Okay, so let me start. Thank you very much, Aldo. So my name is Xavier. I've been working for roughly 1 year for Twikit. I'm focused on partnerships like these partnerships we have here. So Twikit is focused on design automation.
Thank you, Xavier. My name is Michaël Vandezande. I'm the COO at ZiggZagg. Our booth is, I would say, next door. My role at ZiggZagg is supporting the CEO, the overall management, with strategic decisions on software, hardware. I'm also more technical support of the sales team. And I myself have a background in industrial product design, which helps to, let's say, translate customers from the more conservative manufacturing methods to additive. So yeah, we have a lot of work ahead of us.
Hey, my name is Aleksander. I'm the co-founder and CEO from Formnext. Our booth is also at that floor, in that direction. And as a software company, we solve 3 biggest problems in the market. The first one is to understand why 3D printing makes sense. So we identify parts suitable for this technology in an automated way. The second big problem we believe needs to be solved in the market is to understand the supply chain. So our software is able to manage the supply chain in an automated way as well. And then the third big problem, this is something we will discuss today, I guess, is the challenge of automating and tracing the parts through the production process.
Hi, I'm Evelina. I'm from Elinvision, and we produce the 3-dimensional scanners for food scanning. In business, Elinvision is for 20 years, so we have a good and good knowledge about how to manufacture the devices itself.
Thank you for your own introduction. Okay. First question for my colleague Xavier. So, can you explain to me and the audience what's the general difference between off-the-shelf insoles and your products and custom-made products?
So yeah, absolutely. The idea of an orthosis is basically to prevent or to eliminate pain all over. And so the idea of having a custom made is really made to your fit. So a standard off-the-shelf orthosis will do the trick up to a certain degree. When you have a custom made product, it's really made to fit your body. Obviously, per definition, this will go further.
Okay, thank you for that clear answer. Next question is when 3D printing comes involved. Next question is for Michael. 3D printing comes involved. Why? Why for insoles?
Well, the answer most people expect is it's going to be cheaper, it's going to be faster, you can personalize it and so on. But the real answer is actually that making insoles or these MPD sockets is a craftsmanship. And for example, with a shoemaker, at least in Belgium, but shoemakers are disappearing. Nobody goes to school to become a shoemaker unless very specific ones. And the same goes with insole making. It's a craftsmanship that is in the hands of mostly older people with a lot of knowledge, and they're inside these very medical companies. And eventually they will retire, and all that knowledge is or lost or in the hands of very few. And with 3D printing, we can actually take that knowledge, take that knowledge and apply it to where it's best. For example, insoles, you can add a lot of knowledge in there without the need of a craftsmanship, because the craftsmanship is done by machines, and this is inevitable. So aside from being cheaper, faster, and you can do a lot of personalization with it, it's something for, especially for companies that are planning to keep on doing insoles, it's like investing in the future. So 3D printing will take that craftsmanship and make it forever.
Would you say that it's greener as well?
Well, with additive, as cliché as it sounds, we only use the material that we need. So we're not taking away, cutting away, milling away material that is for the trash. So in that sense, yes, it's greener.
Okay, thank you for, again, a clear answer. I hear a lot of steps coming from scan to print and patient, but how does it get automated? Maybe Aleksander, you can answer that question. How to automate this flow for a custom install?
Yeah, I will answer this question in a second, but I want to touch on your thought, which I think is very interesting. You say that 3D printing is a digital process, digital production process. And we hope to build the digital layer for this process. And I think this is very exciting. Now, to answer your question, I like to talk about stories, and I like to also look at how 3D printing developed. It's not a new technology, obviously. We all know that it was used for prototyping, but because it was used for prototyping, it was very manual, right? All the steps to produce it were very engineering, heavy on engineering people. So to achieve this knowledge transfer from human to software, you need this digital layer, right? And also because there is this skill gap, which Michael mentioned, a lot of automation needs to happen. So the steps which we automate is all the way from the scan. Indeed, the data from this scan part are processed through the Twikit software. We then process them further and make them printable. We do track the part through the production process. So right now, I think this is something we can talk about, but the parts are printed on HP machines, and you need to document what parameters those machines have been running with the given parts. But then also you have all the post-processing steps, and then also those parts, they obviously need to, in an automated way, get to the customer. Right? So how do we do that? There is a great company on this trade show called AM Flow, which actually had built a production line to process those parts. So all those information is stored in one place. And I guess, I hope I'm answering your question, but these are the different production steps which we are, well, not only automating, but also tracing the part, the history of the part, so that the customer then can have a kind of a quality standard and quality control of it as well.
That is indeed the answer to my question. Next question, since we're talking about the evolution from prototyping to where we are now, you mentioned to me that scanning is already used quite a while, but what is the newest evolution in scanning technology for medical appliances?
When we started, the scan itself to the PLC went for approximately 2 to 5 minutes. And now we have like 5 to 7 seconds while we get the scan on the screen, and we can post-process it and adapt all these processes into the solution. Technologies, basically the microchips, processors. This was the solution that enabled us to have the better, the faster, the more accurate scans. So technology, and of course the colleagues, when we started, there was some gaps in the system. Like previously you mentioned, well, it's the craftsmanship, and now we can have this insole within an hour or two. Previously, we had like a day or three, depending on how the system would work, how it was made, and how it was made.
So generally the evolution was more time efficient. That's what I understand. Okay, thank you for your answer. And a question for my colleague Xavier now. What's the advantage for the orthotist who in the end uses the software of Twikit, but what's the advantage for him that the flow is now digital?
So the answer is indeed not only with Twikit, the answer is in automating the software on one side, so something that we're doing together, but also as much as possible automating the complete flow. And Alex, you mentioned that very well. Also in post-processing, there is more and more automation that's being possible, and that's a very big advantage. So the advantage for the orthotist himself would be that we reduce a lot of the time that he's spending on the system, which creates time to spend on the patient. So the advantage is really that he can focus on what he does best, and that's putting his medical knowledge on the patient. That's really the major advantage is time. The second big advantage is keeping control of the whole process. We see a lot of the process where phone boxes are used and where the knowledge of the orthotist is being translated into a system, and a technician actually makes the orthosis. Using our combined system, we can keep control of the solution in the end for the patient.
So in the end, the patient benefits the most. Okay, thank you for that. Now a question for Michael. We talked about the progress and the evolution we made, but what's about the future for 3D printing of custom insoles?
Well, producing them was step one. Making sure that we have that case that we can go to the patient's doctors with that solution. Our next step, since additives is growing and more is expected, a very important one is traceability. So we want to know throughout the whole end-to-end solution, from the moment it's created, via the scanning, via the Twikit, that it comes into the ERP system, and then eventually it's produced by us. We, as you might know, we have an ISO 13485 standard, so for medical production parts. So traceability is key. We have to be able to tell our customer at any stage in the process, beginning and end, what were the parameters, what was the material, and so on and so on. And for that we need unique coding. And it's interesting, when you ask that question, what's the future? I think we will push that traceability even further, even beyond the prints themselves. So there is a project that we, alongside the part that's being printed, the packaging for it, by no coincidence, I have the package here behind me. But there's a project that we do with HP currently, the Smart Factory solution, which is actually, while we are making very personalized products, that we also personalize the packaging. That actually makes a lot of sense for a service bureau as ourselves, that we make the parts sure that we will ship them to you in a package made for the part we made for you. If it's large, it's going to be a large package. If it's small, round, it's going to be a small, round packaging with unique coding, which is generated in the beginning. There we have a complete circular end-to-end solution. And I think that the future of 3D printing will be there. Personalization to the max.
I just want to touch on this as well, to add one more thought. So, because you mentioned that the next step could be also including additional services which you could provide to your customers, which is doing this packaging and stuff like this. But if you think it further, right, you could even offer to do the whole assembly in case it is not just a shoe sole, but another part which requires assembly, right? So you could produce the part in different technologies and then do the assembly, then put it into the package. And that way you provide a full-blown service. And so I feel observing the market, I feel like service bureaus in the AM space are developing into that direction.
In essence, that's what you would do, I guess, with 3D printing and then 2D printing the box. So combining these two technologies, is that how you should see it?
But that's indeed the example of the insoles, but there are other projects where we do more than just putting a part in a box. So it's true. But of course, we as in our core, we're manufacturers, so these extra steps have to make economical sense. So we analyze each project individually, but when it does make sense to assemble, put it in a package or add anything else, we'll look at it, and when it makes sense, we'll do it, for sure.
So, if I can conclude, I have one more question, but it starts with the patient, and in this full circular project, it ends with the customer. So from scanning, shipping, that's generating that automated workflow. If I have one last question, what is for you, for example, Xavier, the project or the partnership we have, the main benefit for the market? What would you think is the main benefit?
Well, the fact that there is only one thing to do for an artist. Once he has defined his product, he can stay in one system and completely go down to have a finished product sent to the patient. And so we're always talking about end-to-end, and I think this is now an example where we're actually end-to-end, completely from the scan, software, and the printing itself. So that's the advantage, I would say.
I hope it's okay. I want to also add to that. So because you asked about the benefits for the customer, right? And I feel like we are, at this moment, we are in a time where we can really leverage the promises of Industry 4.0. This is a buzzword right now, but what does it mean actually? That basically means that we can leverage data to automate a lot of processes. And then many of our customers need to address the current trends which we see on the market, and this one of them was mentioned already, and there is this manufacturing skilled gap, right? So there are not enough people to do the job. So we really have to automate. That's the benefit. We can right now with this combined solution, as an example, automate a lot of production, not only in medical 3D printing, but within other production technologies. But there is also a big need for personalization. We obviously talked about that with the scanners. And then another thing is that many customers really need this kind of on-demand aspect, right? So they need the part at the time when they need it, and cannot rely on one supplier. In the worst case, in overseas, right? So it can always happen that some ship doesn't go through the channel. You want to have the solution which allows you to produce parts on demand. So these are the benefits are addressing those needs, right?
Okay, thanks again for this interesting panel discussion. I would like to thank you again for joining us today on our stage. If there are questions in the audience, the 4 speakers and the rest of the Twikit team and the other teams at Formnext will be more than happy to answer all your questions. Thanks, everyone.